Hi everyone, back to some maintenance. It seems like our spotlight on Slick Magnetos was a big hit last year sometime. And so most recently in flying the Hummingbird Helicopter, I've got a Surefly mag here and a Slick direct drive mag on the right hand side. The Surefly mag now has a service bulletin against it. And that's a longer story we'll talk about in another video. But what I've decided to do in the meantime, while they get this service bulletin figured out, is to replace both the Slick and the Surefly with Bendix Magnetos. That's a very common application in Robinson helicopters and some of the other helicopters out there. So I'm going to feel a little more comfortable for a while with Bendix Mags. So I thought I'd take the opportunity here to actually walk you through replacing Bendix Mags, timing them to the engine, and all the associated changes we have to do. It's going to require new harnesses. The harnesses are different on a Bendix mag than a Slick mag. The pickups for the magneto indications, RPM and TAC indications, rather, in the cockpit are different. So I'm going to show you how to wire those. And what we'll do now is we'll go over to the bench, and I'm going to show you how we're going to actually wire and use the Bendix mags. The Surefly, being an electronic mag, is timed at 0 degrees for starting. And you don't need an impulse coupled mag. Now, if you remember, 6-cylinders, IO540s, don't really like impulse coupled mags, so we're not going to do that here. We're going to use a Bendix mag on the left side with a retard breaker, much like I did on the RV10 a couple months ago when I shared that with you. So I'm going to use the Slick SureSTART shower of sparks on the left side, Bendix mag with a retard breaker on it, and then we'll use a direct drive Bendix mag on the right hand side, much like this Slick Magneto here. So I want to go into the bench and I'll show you a setup and show you how it works, and I'll take some of the magic out of it for you. For those of you who are amateur builders, you can do the magneto replacement and the magneto timing, etc., and that's primarily the audience for this that I'm trying to explain to. For those of you who own certified airplanes, you're going to need your A&P to do this kind of thing. You're not permitted to do this according to FAR 43. So let's go look at the bench and I'll show you the setup. Okay, here we are on the bench, and I've got some things set up to show you some differences between Slick Magnetos and how we're going to time the Bendix and how the shower of sparks works. It can get a little bit complicated if you haven't done it, so try and follow along. By the way, my comment on the Surefly mag, just to be clear, the service bulletin right now pertains only to helicopters, and specifically it was targeted at Robinson helicopters. So those of you with the Surefly in the aircraft, no need to be concerned about any of that. Okay? So if you remember just a little bit going backwards, this is a Slick Magneto, and the way we time a Slick Magneto is we look at the data plate, and this one says left rotation. See that L there? Says left. So what you do then is we rotate. We stick a pin right there where it says L, and we just rotate the magneto until the pin drops in there and it locks it in place. This is now ready to install into the engine at the appropriate engine timing, in this case 25 degrees before top dead center. So that's just a little refresher on a Slick, because there's some differences in timing on the Bendix mags. Bendix mags, if you look inside here, there's a little vent window, and you can see a red line on the tooth gear that spins around. So in that, what you do is you turn right here, just grab it and turn it until that gear that's got the red paint on it lines up with the window. This is now ready to install into the engine. Now what you can do here is you can kind of hold it and make sure you don't move it, or you can get this tool that doesn't cost that much. And what it does is it goes in and it holds that tooth in place, and you lock it. Just screw it in place, and then that will hold the magneto. Gotta fight the spring here. There we go, got it down a little bit. Now one of the things you want to be careful of is when you put this into the engine, make sure you remove this before you turn the engine at all, or you're going to break that gear in there. All right, so there's our little timing tool. That's the timing differences between Bendix and Slick Magnetos. There are some other differences here. If you're using the magnet pickup for your RPM indication, you can see that the hole here, I'm going to roll this one over, take this out. This pickup always goes down by the magnet, the spinning magnet. Don't make a mistake and put it in this hole. You won't get any RPM indication. But it goes right down here by the spinning magnet. I'll show you. You can see the magnet spins there. Okay. So this one screws into there like this. We'll do that once we get it on the engine. If you look at the Slick Mag, it's a different size hole. So you're going to need a different size sender, unfortunately. Yuma makes these, and they make them both for Slick and for the Bendix mags. So does Advanced Flight Systems. They provide one for both Slick and Bendix as well. In this case, I have to use the Yuma one because we're feeding the engine and rotor gauge that comes from Vertical Aviation. So now what I want to show you the difference. This is our direct drive mag that's going to go on the right hand side in place of the Slick 43. 51, I think it is, direct drive mag. You can see there's only one connection here for your P lead. So, and I haven't put the drive on this yet because I need to remove it from the other magneto. But basically, this one, we got to make certain that during the start sequence, we ground out the P lead. We do not want this one firing during the start sequence. We're going to put this on the engine at 25 degrees before top dead center. If we allow that to fire during the start sequence, there's a good chance we'll get a kickback on the engine and potentially break the starter or break some teeth off of the flywheel. So how do we turn this one off during the start sequence? Well, there's a couple of ways to do that. The easiest way to do it is to use toggle switches. You'll see that in a lot of amateur built aircraft. So what you do is you just start with one toggle switch up and leave the other one down. Now, one of the things I will remind you, for those of you wiring up your own magnetos, is your typical on-off switch needs to be installed upside down, because a magneto works when the switch is actually off. The P lead is open, the magneto fires. So what we're going to do is leave that switch down during the start sequence, and if we've got the switch turned around right, that's actually going to ground the P lead. So it'll leave the direct drive magneto off. The other way to do that, the more common way, if you have a typical key switch that has off, right, left, both, and start, if you look at the back side, the right magneto is very easy to put a jumper on it. Typically, we install the right magneto as the direct drive magneto. So what happens here with this little jumper, when we turn the key switch to start, this grounds out the right magneto internally by going to the ground. So that's a simple way of doing it. You just got to remember to make certain you add this jumper. It does not typically come installed with your key switch. Okay, let's look at the difference here on a magneto that has a retard breaker. You'll actually see two connections. If you look right here, this is your typical P lead connection. It's actually no different looking than the P lead connection on a normal Bendix direct drive magneto. But there's also one more connection that says retard right there. So that's where we're going to connect up our shower of sparks. And you can see what goes on here. Here's your shower of sparks. We're going to mount it on the firewall side of the engine compartment. And it's a pretty simple wiring diagram. The P lead gets connected between a couple pins, this one, 1 and 5. And then we've got a P lead going to the magneto here because we want to ground out the P lead now on this magneto. For the same reason we don't want the direct drive one firing, we don't want the retard breaker firing, the retarded magneto firing on the normal breaker during the start sequence. This Slick SureSTART takes care of that. So how does that all work? Basically, what happens is we're going to apply power to this box only during the start sequence. So how do we do that? Well, an easy way to do it, if you look at your starter solenoid, we've got this out of the airplane right now, but typically what happens is your big wire comes here and a big wire goes off to the starter. There are two terminals you'll see on your starter solenoid. One is labeled S, if you can see that. Does that show up? Or do
Yes.
Okay. So the S shows up. That's typically a wire to a 12 volt switch, your key switch actually. If you look at the back of your key switch, there's a connection for a battery and for a start. So the start lead from your key switch goes right there to the start terminal. What's this other switch? It says ignition. guess what? That's where we want to wire power to the SureSTART. This terminal only becomes active when we actually touch the key and cause the solenoid to close. We'll get 12 volts here. We will then apply that 12 volts to the Slick SureSTART. And what the SureSTART does then is apply that to the Bendix Mag through the retard terminal right here. And I'm actually going to demonstrate this here for you so you can see how much better sparking you get during a start sequence. So basically what I'm going to do here, if you look at the Bendix Mag on this one, we've got it set up. There's your, that's where it would be for timing at 25 degrees. See the red? Can you see the red?
Now I do. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And so we don't want it to fire there, like I said. So what it does, this shorts out, grounds basically, the normal terminal and applies power to the retard breaker. So I'm going to show you how that works here by applying power. Let's see where I want this now. I want power on this lead, and we want to make sure the magneto is grounded. So this would simulate power coming from the starter solenoid right here. I've got a battery hooked up, and the magneto is typically grounded. So we're going to ground that. And you can hear this start up. Now, if you'll zoom in on the spark plug, and I'm going to turn the magneto so that we get a little bit past, usually about 38 degrees. Look at that spark we get.
Yep.
That's a nice bright spark for starting. So that's your shower sparks. You can see why it's called the shower sparks thing. So that really helps with starting, and that's what we're going to use instead of an impulse coupled mag. So now basically what we're going to do is remove the magnetos from the helicopter and the associated wiring harness, etc. Install new wiring harnesses that we have here. If you can look, the harnesses for the Bendix, they attach in a different manner. Okay, they bolt on with 4 screws here. The Slick harness actually goes on with 4 bolts, but it's a different setup. You can see they don't fit. So a lot of extra work today, but we'll get through it. All new harnesses, and got some wiring to do. This wiring that I've showed you on the bench is actually all set up to go on the helicopter. Okay, we're going to be doing some of this in stages for you, but here I've removed the harnesses. It's a left and right harness, both off of the Surefly. You can see that harness is gone. And I've also removed the right-hand direct drive magneto. So that's this one right here, which we showed you on the bench. Okay, this is a model 6350 on the 6-cylinder. So it's direct drive. I'm going to take this off and put it on this drive thing right here. I'm going to put that on the Bendix. A couple other things we're going to do. If you look up inside where the magneto attaches, you'll see some rubber cushions. Those are magneto drive cushions. Hopefully you got a good view there. So I always replace those when we put a new magneto on, or at 500 hours you're supposed to do that as well. They're not that expensive. I think they're about 10 bucks each from Spruce. So we're going to replace those on both sides. And then one of the other things we do is want to stage the engine at the 25 degrees before top dead center that we're going to set the magneto in for timing. So it's a little hard to do that on the helicopter, but I'm going to show you what I've done here. If you can look inside there, right up there by the gear, right by the starter, and I'm going to try and zoom in there for you. Right there, you'll see that I put a little red line on one of the teeth on the flywheel, lined up with the hole in the starter at 25 degrees before top dead center. You can also verify that. Most Lycomings have marks on the back side of the flywheel. So right there, I'm going to zoom in for you. You can see the 25-degree mark. And that is in line with the seam of the case. So you can see it's a little hard to see here. And I, quite candidly, just use it to verify. I do put a spark plug in there, #1 cylinder. And then just like a propeller, unfortunately, we've got to reach inside here and turn the fan. I don't have a propeller until we're at top dead center, just knowing that I've got compression there. And then I back it off to 25 degrees before top dead center. And that's where we're going to install both magnetos. I'm going to go back to the bench and show you something else on the Bendix Mag. Remember a few minutes ago, I showed you how to set the timing gear inside the Bendix Mag with the little red gear right there. And I said, that's where you want to set it to open on your engine. You can also verify that it's working properly by hooking up a buzz box. It's your normal timing box that we're going to use on the engine once it's installed. You hook it up to the P lead here and to the ground, and it just within a little fraction of a movement there, the points should open. And that's exactly how we're going to time it on the engine. That's what that's all about. So we'll set this up, put it on the engine, and then somewhat clamp it down, not real tight. With the engine set at 25 degrees before top dead center, we're going to rotate this magneto because the engine will hold this gear still. And you can see by rotating the magneto a little bit, we get the points to open up exactly where we want it for timing. Okay, so what we've done here now is put new cushions in the engine, as I mentioned, on the drive, and we've slid the magneto up into position. And once we get that up there, don't forget to take the timing tool out. Remember, that is right in here, holding the magneto locked in place. So you want to pull that out before we do any adjustments. Now this is where we put the buzz box on the P lead, and we just want to turn the magneto until it starts to come on, right there. So the points are opening there. That's where we're going to lock it down. So we're going to lock it down with a 1/2 inch wrench over here. Always use new lock washers on those. I'll turn this off so it's not bugging us. And people have asked, can you use an ohm meter to do this? No, you can't. You have to use a buzz box. We're just checking the points opening. It's very, very tiny resistance. So there's a little bit of resistance network inside the buzz box that works for you. Now, while we're at it, we're going to check one more thing here. What I'd like to do is show you how to check that the magneto is in fact grounded for the start sequence. So, and we're going to check two things here actually. We're going to check that the key works in the off position. Okay, so what we're doing now is checking that the P lead is grounded when we're in the off position. So I'm going to turn the multimeter on, and you should get audio. So we've got, means it's shorted to ground in the off position. We're going to go to the right mag. It should go off because now we're running on the right magneto, which is the magneto that we just installed. When we go to the left mag, again, it should be grounded. So we're only going to run on the left mag. In the both position, it should be ungrounded again. And then as I mentioned, during the start sequence, when we move the key to the start position, it should ground out the direct drive mag on the right-hand side. So you can see that's all working properly. Okay, so here's the next step now. I've got the left mag installed here and just slightly clamped down so we can turn it. So if you remember, I showed you how to time the right magneto to the engine, and we locked it down. Now what we're going to do is synchronize these magnetos to each other. We want them to fire at the same time. It actually makes for a much smoother running engine. So to do that, we use a synchronizer box here that has both a left and a right lead on it. So in this case, I'm going to put the red lead on the left magneto and the green lead on the right magneto. And what we're going to do here, and by the way, for those of you doing this on propeller-driven airplanes, please make certain nobody's in front of the propeller when you're messing with the prop. In this case, I've got all ignition leads disconnected. So we're not going to, have a problem with this engine firing. So either disconnect all of your ignition leads is what I recommend doing. It's just very easy to get hurt because we are going to move the propeller here a little bit, in this case the fan, just to verify that they both stay synced together. So I'm going to turn on the buzz box, and notice it says they are synced when the lights are out. And I'm going to show you how this works. I'm going to come back on this mag. There, that's showing me now the right magneto is not synchronized with the left one. So in this case, we're going to adjust the left one right here. I'm turning it, and I'm going to redo that so you can see what I'm doing here. So it really is easy. We're just moving this magneto. See that? There are slots right there in the case that allow you to move it. So right there, we're going to get it so it's synchronized, and then we'll lock it down. And I'm going to verify by just moving the engine that they continue to come on at the same time. So let me lock it down here, and then I'll show you how we move the engine. But I'm going to try and do this here by myself without my trusty video recorder here, Carol. But anyway, basically what we've done is we've come off of the compression on number 1 cylinder. I've actually gone around. And then what I'm going to do is slowly come up right there. I'll come up, and we're going to come up on the compression right there at 25 degrees before top dead center. You can hear the magnetos are staying synchronized. They both lights went out. And then if we look over here, we should see the red tooth marked right up there. There's our 25 degree point. So the magnetos are synchronized. They're actually synchronized very well here. So the next thing to do is finish up some of the wiring, and then we'll add the ignition harnesses and tie all that down. All right, I showed you the Slick SureSTART, how it worked on the bench. Here it is mounted to the aft side of the firewall. I've got it all wired. For power, as I mentioned, we ran a power lead here all the way to the front side of the aircraft. That's where the starter solenoid is, so we could pick up power only during the start sequence, as I showed you on the bench. So that's all wired in, but one other thing we had to do, replacing the Surefly with a magneto, is the Surefly actually has its own signal generator called a TAC2 for the ethos indication. And so I've got to rewire. I ran a wire here to the P lead of the Bendix Mag now with a 60K ohm resistor out there at the magneto. You want to put those resistors as close to the magneto as possible. And then I'll wire it to the proper pin here in a bit, so we'll get indication on both left and right when we're doing an ignition check. So here we're going to do a final look over before we button everything up. There's the Bendix retarded mag on the left side, and we're checking all the connections. I've got the harnesses all cable tied away. Spark plugs are tight, reinstalled with new washers. I always do that. And make certain the plugs are on tight there, where the harness is attached to the spark plug. Coming around to the right side, you can see the direct drive Bendix mag and its associated harness and wiring. That side's already closed up, as you can see. And basically just want to verify everything's ready, no tools are left anywhere. And over here you can see I actually added a connector for the magneto pickup rather than replace the wiring. In case I ever do go back to a Slick mag, it will make replacing that pickup just a whole lot faster. So let's go see if it runs. All right, here we are, the moment of truth. It took about 11 hours to pull the Surefly and the Slick magneto and all the associated wiring and harness. So we've got 2 Bendix mags, one with Slick SureSTART on the left side, and then a Bendix direct drive on the right-hand side, new harnesses. As I mentioned, I had to rewire the RPM indications. So we're going to start up now, and first thing I'll look for is immediately check at low powered idle that both ignitions are in fact working. And then I've got RPM indications for both left and right magneto when I flip from one to the other. So we'll try that. If all looks good, I'll be giving Carol a thumbs up. Once it's warmed up, I'll engage the rotors, go out and hover for a bit, make sure everything's good, and then go fly. So thanks for watching.
So was the operation a success?
That was wonderful. Boy, with both mags really synced to each other, I noticed a huge difference on the engines, nice and smooth. And it actually ran a little bit cooler. So it was just wonderful. It was well worth it. Well, as you can see, we had a very successful transformation on the helicopter from a combination Surefly and Slick Magneto to 2 Bendix mags. I'm actually really happy with the performance. I've made 3 flights now, and the engine is noticeably smoother, so that's pretty exciting. So in summary, I'd just like to remind you of a few things for those of you who are going to start doing magnetos yourself. First, I can't emphasize enough, please make certain the key switch is off and you verified that it is in fact grounding both magnetos. What I honestly recommend is you actually pull the harnesses off of the spark plugs or remove the spark plugs. It makes it much easier to rotate the propeller to actually get that timing really set up real well if you do remove the spark plugs, because you're not fighting compression. You can put your thumb over cylinder 1 to figure out when it's coming up on compression stroke, or what I'll do is leave a spark plug in that cylinder. It'll rotate through all the other ones real easy, and then it'll come up hard on number 1. Then you can remove it and fine tune where you need it for the timing. As I noted on this helicopter, it was set at 25 degrees before top dead centers where we set the magnetos in. 25 is just on this engine. You want to look at whatever engine you're doing. There should be a data plate, or look in the manual. Sometimes the Lycoming or Continental application charts will show you where the timing should be set. Most of them are anywhere from 20 to 23 to 25 degrees. So it's really important that you set the engine at that angle. If you look closely when I showed you the backside of the flywheel on the Lycoming, there are marks at 20, 23, and 25 degrees. So set it where you want those points to open, and then install the magneto. And then clamp them down, use those new lock washers as I mentioned. Verify they ground properly if you're using a switch like I showed you in the video. But again, please be careful. Once, when you're working with those magnetos and timing them, they are in fact ungrounded. So don't leave the harnesses connected while you're doing all that stuff, okay? It's not that complicated. Even A&P mechanics sometimes get a little bit intimidated by having to do magneto changes or magneto timing. Hopefully between this video and the one that we did on the Slick mags sometime last year should enable you to do the magneto replacement and timing yourself. Don't forget, Bendix and Slick both have 500-hour service bulletin requirements, and that does require removing the mags, doing some inspections, and sometimes replacing some of the internal components. They run much better when you do that, and it makes them much more reliable. Thanks for watching. Hopefully it helped.